What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we're taking a look at the Bitcoin price chart and the altcoin market as the price of Bitcoin suddenly surges nearly $2,000 yesterday, jumping right back above the high that was set back there on February 2nd. After what was looking like a throwback yesterday from some broken support in here, eventually cracks its way through and goes back above the height from there on February 2nd. I was definitely in shock and awe to see that move come up right there. But now that we've got this sudden surge happening here in the Bitcoin price, which translated into the altcoin market, big moves over there in the altcoins too, it's time to take a look at where we are with the Bitcoin price right now. One thing that's obvious as we start the day out is that we are still sitting below the height of the range. So we are still technically range bound from back there in August. We haven't broken out in any type of convincing way. Although we'll see what today has in store for us in the next few days after coming off of such a dramatic price move that we saw yesterday. Now, 2 days ago, the day before yesterday, I had put out a video. And as we all know, we've been looking at the anatomy of a trading range. We discussed this for Bitcoin at the top of the price chart back in 2021 and how that was just a spitting image looking for an ABC to really kind of emerge in there. Obviously, this is starting to look different. However, it still hasn't taken out the top of the range. So for newcomers to the channel, you'll always learn that when prices are up high, I start to get kind of cautious. I get kind of worried. When prices are low, I'm that optimistic guy that everybody loves to hate. But definitely, while we're at the top of the range, of course, this is always still going to worry me that we are still working within that. However, things are looking optimistic based on what we talked about on the video from 2 days ago. And I'm still not fully convinced this is what we are doing. But it is interesting based on the fact that we talked about it just 2 days ago and how our FTX collapse so similarly mirrored the C19 collapse that came out of there and how structurally we're really doing all of these same things and where we were finding some support building starting to show up here for Bitcoin at this point. So the nice thing about this, right? So in my mind, the two scenarios I'm kind of looking at right now are one, are we continuing something like this for Bitcoin? Or two, are we still just within in that training range and we're still going to ABC our way back down in here? Those are still the thoughts. Those are the things that are in my mind. And as long as this guy sits right here, right on top of us, there's no way I could sit there with any convincing reasoning to say we must break through and that we still can't do this. But what's nice about this is we kind of have like just from a scenario perspective, we know if this is our whole story that is to be playing out in here, we can't be going and taking out this low, right? I mean, that low would tell you very clear if it is or is not. So we kind of have a nice clear line in the sand to say whether or not this is invalidated or not. In most circumstances, an ABC is going to get you way below that level in there. Even in your most conservative of pullbacks, you would get back down below in here. But should something like this be continuing to play out, if this thing is so ridiculously bullish, really not really seeing much of pullbacks really at all happening in here. So if we start seeing anything really kind of starting to pull back again, it starts to kind of invalidate that this is an actual real breakout working in here. So as you can see, we go and take out the top of the range, then we have to work our way through the height over here, and then we're out, right? So what have we done? We just kind of come through here, we're breaking through, now we're trying to work our way out and then get a true breakout from the height over here. So I'll take this all day. I'll be excited about this all day, but boy, it was not on my bingo card of most likely ones to end up happening here. But if we are to get that, right, and if we are to have to work out this area right here, why would we have to work this area out so hard, pushing to try to, bam, finally get the actual breakout in there, which, judging by what happens, is like the real breakout to happen in the market. Why would we have to do that right here, right now for Bitcoin? What is so important about this outside of that being over there? Let's get all this junk off the screen, flip to the weekly, and throw on all the moving averages to see why we would have to work this area out so aggressively for a little while. And that's because we have the 50-week and the 200-week in here. And so we've talked about this. It is the first time Bitcoin's had to come back and fight these like this before. Now, this was the fight against the 50-week back in 2019 coming off the lows, right? So we had the aggressive move off the lows, then the long battle against the 50-week. Aggressive move off the lows, the battle against the 50-week. Looking back to 2015, break up off the lows. And then finally, this was the spring phase of Wyckoff accumulation. But one can argue we have already had the spring phase right here when FTX collapsed. So having to really work against that moving average, but at the same time, doing something we've never done before. We've never had to fight on the bottom side of the 200-week moving average before. It's the first time in all of Bitcoin's history to have to do that. Now, in my live stream, it was asked, about the death cross, right? We obviously have the death cross. You have the golden cross that has happened over here on the daily time frame, but you actually have the death cross that has occurred over here on the weekly time frame. The death cross is going to be when the 50-week moving average crosses below the 200-week moving average, and the golden cross is going to be when the 50-week crosses above the 200. We've never even had to deal with that with Bitcoin before, wherever a death cross has occurred, because the 50's always been able to hold above the 200 for all of Bitcoin's history. It's the first time for this to end up happening. But I think those terms are often overused, because when we look back to how these crosses of Doom and Goblin Town end up happening, like we've talked about for 6-8 months at this point, these crosses, at least on the 50 and the 100 week, had already signified the bottom was in back in here. They did not represent that, oh no, it's going to get significantly worse now that this has happened. It just marked that, man, things have pulled down and enough time has elapsed that these things are just super low. And that story was true over here for the altcoin market when the 50 crossed the 100 week. And as a matter of fact, we even have a death cross over here on the altcoin market back in 2020 after the C19 sell-off happened. You actually had the 50-week crossing the 200-week right here. So let's take this off. We'll get rid of these. Here we go. Here is our death cross. Did the weekly death cross on the altcoin market in 2020 mean that the market was bearish? No, it just meant enough time had elapsed, and then it goes right back into golden cross, right? But we have never had to deal with this before for Bitcoin, so we're going to be watching it for the first time. And hopefully it's true. Hopefully what we see over there is accurate. And we are in like breakout structure happening in here, but this thing may just have to work its way out. But at the same time, I'm going to remain impartial on that as we sit here at the top of the range. The resistance is all here. The 50 weeks there. The 200 weeks there. The top of the range is over there right now. For me, it's being a spectator here to see, are we going to break through the 50, the 200, and the top of the range? Should we get that breakout, boy, then I can start flipping on my exciting stuff and start looking to upward targets. But as you guys know, I've been talking a lot about ranging action in here. And until we break from this range, it's still going to be my thoughts. However, we have something happening very interesting that we've seen happen before that eventually sent stuff into a rampage. But it did require working, and then eventually a breakout came. But like I said, we could see all the people that's just flipped right back to bearish again, calling for 12K when we had this little pullback that happened right in here, and then whoop, it goes right back up. And I think there's still a tremendous amount of people on the sideline. There's still a lot of people who are just going to keep getting spooked out. And it's going to be at that point where everybody is unquestionably convinced that this thing is super bullish, and where we see euphoria again. That's the point where I'll get like more scared about the bigger, broader trend. My conviction is that we've seen the low. Now we're trying to figure out ranging behavior and breakout behavior, but we still have a tremendous amount of bears out there, and which is excellent. Some of them felt like they got left behind. Then boom, it goes up again. Could you imagine what the market would be like should we get this actual breakout happening right in here? It would be pretty magnificent. But yeah, just speaking on that, man, even on this one, like even for this scenario, like we talked about 2 days ago, boy, I certainly would have expected this thing to at least range in here for a while. And boy, it's so shocking that it's just curious on, man, is this thing like super mega bull? And when I say super mega bull, don't ever forget, it still just means retraces. I don't want people to think super mega bull means I'm going for like 150K or anything like that. Everything for me is still about heading back to retracement levels. And once we get back to retracement levels in this market, especially for Bitcoin in particular, that's where I've got to take a lot of profit on the market and then just sit back and wait, right? So we get back up in here. And I talked about this in the live stream that I discussed this in a video too. And I don't know if we're heading there right now, man. This could still go out like this, and we could be in here for months before a big break eventually ends up coming in here. But once we get back into these areas in here, this is where I start taking a lot of profit, moving a lot of stuff into USD. My game plan is 65% will move into United States dollars. And then I sit back and wait. And I play by the rules of what the data has said on the market. And so like I am fully willing, and this is just my personal play on the market. Everybody do the things that the way they want to do it, is that I'm willing to miss all of this. So if this market wants to move all the way back up to here, I am willing to skip all of that and not be a champion during this moment, let the market rip without me and me sit on the sidelines with 65% of my cash, and then get a breakout from the top, and then me jump back into the altcoin market again with some of that capital to play those altcoins again. But while we're here in this area, it would be just too dangerous for me, having already gone through all of this, to get back into here to risk it all, that we're going to keep going. We get back to the retrace. I take a bunch of capital out. I sit back and I wait and see what this market does. If this market rolls over, then the market rolls over. And my 35% that I still hold will roll over with the market. If it keeps marching its way up, then it will march its way up with my 65% sitting in USD, and I will miss out on those gains. My 35% will still continue to ride with that, but my 65% will totally miss it. I will get the big fat L on my forehead for that, which I'm fine with. But should we get a breakout into all-time highs for Bitcoin, a lot of that capital I have will flood back into the altcoin market. And why would I do that? And it's because everything I do is just based on data of how the market has behaved historically. Once Bitcoin breaks an all-time high, it has shown that the percentage gains for Bitcoin in here are far less than the percentage gains that happen in the altcoin market. So should we get to that, we'll play with that, all that stuff when we get there. We're nowhere near there right now. It's hard to sit there and start fantasizing about that at this point. But I am just going to go ahead and lay the foundation for it, that if we do get the big retrace, the thing I've talked about for over a year at this point, my plan is still the same. Absolutely nothing changes. I take big profits on my portfolio in here, and especially probably even more profits on all the stuff that I accumulated down in here. But speaking of the altcoin market, how about that bounce off that 200-day moving average? So, it's real interesting, right? So we've been talking about this too, like wanting to see it hold the 510, 515 billion, and that, especially let's just see it hold the 200-day moving average. And I got asked in those live streams, kind of like, BCB, if you see the ABC coming out there for Bitcoin, what do you think will happen with the altcoin market? Do you think it's really going to be able to hold that level? And, my conviction has been, altcoin market's strong. We're going to hold this. And that, we've obviously been doing Wyckoff accumulation happening over here ever since June of last year, and that we're working on our sign of strength in here. I guess it should be no surprise that Bitcoin took a pop up in there, as this was the thesis happening here for the altcoin market. But definitely happy to see that we got that big bounce there for the altcoin market. Things are looking good. So in your sign of strength phase, kind of what you're looking for, then the next phase of the market is really, if this is a true sign of strength in here, it's where this thing really actually starts to get some momentum in here. So definitely an incredibly surprising and amazing day yesterday in the market. But now we can all clearly see where we sit here for Bitcoin. It sits right at the top of the range. It has not broken out of the range, and it does sit right there below the 200-week and the 50-week moving averages. So we are like definitely underneath like crazy resistance right in here. So this isn't a breakout. It was more so just a move very swiftly back to where all that major resistance is right there. The next move, should another breakout happen beyond right here, that's where it's kind of like, holy cow, this is actually pretty awesome. But right now, I have to remain impartial, remain an observer of the market here now, because we're certainly at all those resistance levels on both the daily and the weekly time frame right now. So I'm cheering for it, but definitely being an observer as we sit right here, and don't want to be overly confident on which one's going to happen right here. You're at resistance, right? This isn't like a holding support level. Let's buy it on top of a holding support. And if the support breaks, then bail. This is we're shifting all the way up. We're at the resistance. People who are buying at the resistance are betting that it's going to break through the resistance. People who are traders will sell the resistance, not buy the resistance. It's just a very, very crazy moment right there. And we got to be able to get through all of this stuff happening right in here right now. But should another big breakout come, And should we close the week, right? I think that's more of the thing too. Like not only just getting through with a day or two worth of price action, but actually closing a whole week up there. And for those who, jumped into the market during like YOLO, diamond hands, laser eyes, all that type of stuff, and this is your first time to go through the period of working your way back up, it is a wall of worry the whole way back up. The whole reason why retail investors get pulled into the market and why it's so exciting and so fun and financial media draws you in after the breakout of the all-time high happens, it's because when you look to the left, there's no resistances over there that you're fighting against anymore. It's all just clear skies. So it's like exciting and fun. But when we go back to the upside after a large fall, we are always constantly looking back. Where are the supports that were broken? Where are the resistances that were broken? You could see that happening right in here, that there was support that came in right here back in May, then resistance showed up right there at the exact same time, right? So there was like this clear level that was acting as support and as resistance right there. And just look where we are, right? We're right there. So if you take that into account and then you move your way up even higher and you say, well, look, when we had that big sell-off that took place when Elon Musk and Tesla stopped allowing people to spend their Bitcoin on Tesla products, or Elon was mad about the footprint, the environment footprint that Bitcoin was leaving, and then when China banned the mining of Bitcoin, the support level came in here when Cathie Wood, Jack Dorsey, Elon Musk had their little meeting, right? You go back in here and you say, okay, well, that's another like major support level that acted as support twice in here, right? So we know that, but yet we haven't gone back to test that as a resistance. So that's going to be, we get through here and it's like, oh, great, we got through. Then it's like, okay, now here's the next one. And we're just a little bit below that one. And then after we get through that one, you go back to the next one, right? And then you say, okay, well, look, there was a support here and then there was a resistance here. So it broke through that support, came back and tested that support as resistance, and then plowed its way back down. So then we know there's going to be another one over there. And then not even to mention, hey, what about all those fibs we have to work our way up with, right? So this is the process of working your way back up. And this is what all those stories of anybody who piled in this market, all those stories of the people who made 6,000% gains, 10,000% gains on altcoins or whatever, it's from having to do that, be in that kind of stuff through all of this, right? When Cardano hits a penny, right? When it hits 2 cents, when all these things just hit just absolutely disgustingly low prices that you could have never imagined that happened, then those people had to sit there and go through all of this as you're going back to these resistance levels, going back to the resistance levels, or hey, coming back and then not getting through that resistance and coming back and going off and then finally getting through. The people who got those ridiculously low prices, including me, had to sit through all this garbage of trying to work your way back up through all of this stuff. And then, everybody gets real excited when we get through there. But this is where the big percentages were all made. The people who were able to get in down in here, you got people who buy Ethereum once it breaks through the all-time high and expect that they're going to make the big gains, right? But really, the percentage gains were made on Ethereum having to go through all the garbage to get back to the all-time high, which is a 1,667% gain. Then what happens is all retail piles in at the all-time high and says, I'm going to make $1 bajillion too. And no, you're not. See, you make 241% if you sold the Pico top by jumping in after the all-time high was made. So the big challenge is having to be that guy going through all this junk, and the process is difficult, the process is challenging, and it can sometimes be very time-consuming and exhausting. And the one of the hard parts about it too is that we know when we go back into these things is that we can eventually find one that does end up stopping us for a while. So we're talking about getting a weekly candle close to happen here above the 50-week, above the 200-week moving average, and saying, wow, that was absolutely fantastic. It is fantastic, but it just doesn't mean that we're not going to have to spend some serious time to try to work our way all the way up. Ignore that. I didn't mean to do that. But, it's going to take time. It's going to take time. There's no guaranteed, hey, we get through that one, that's an automatic ticket to Moontown. It's not. We have to go through these processes. We have to go through the retracements. We have to go through all this stuff. And, I think there's a very, very real case to be made that these retracements will provide very serious resistance for Bitcoin. So one day at a time, right, guys? Otherwise, epic day over there in the market yesterday. And now it's about the really big battle there at the top of the range, but great bounce to see there for the altcoin market. But on that note, I'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. I did add another write-up there for the premium newsletter over there on Substack. It is available to anybody who has a premium subscription to the Blockchain Backer newsletter over there on Substack. There is a link in the description of this video to my Substack where you can subscribe. Otherwise, it's time for me to get ready for markets in the morning. I hope that you guys are having a great week. I'll check in with you guys again tomorrow, and I'll check in with you in markets in the morning. But all right, thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor, but if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.